The city that once sparkled with festive lights now felt more like a cemetery of steel and shattered concrete, the kind of place where holiday memories had long since frozen over. Tall apartment blocks rose from the ground like jagged teeth, their windows blasted out by artillery weeks before. Snow kept drifting down, layering the wreckage in white as if mocking the warm Christmas mornings Graybridge used to celebrate. Smoke still curled from the ruins in the eastern quarter, blending with the heavy December sky until it was impossible to tell where the world ended. Captain Adrian Cole stood on what was left of a 20th floor office space, scanning his kill zone through a thermal scope. His insurgent group had spent 3 long weeks perfecting this ambush, and every piece sat exactly where he wanted it. The main boulevard below, once the heart of the city's Christmas parade, had become a choke point. Side streets were collapsed or mined, rooftops manned by marksmen, and the drone jamming gear hummed softly in the corner, cloaking the district in electronic fog. District 7 is sealed, his comms officer reported, adjusting the headset under her fur-lined cap. All exits locked down. Air support won't punch through our interference for at least 40 minutes. Adrian nodded, watching his breath frost in the cold air. Choosing Christmas Eve hadn't been an accident. Government troops were stretched thin for the holiday, and reinforcements wouldn't make it until dawn, far too late. His 37 fighters were spread across 9 buildings in a clean, overlapping ambush pattern, with backup routes through the subway tunnels. He glanced at the photo taped to his rifle. The same boulevard 3 years earlier, bright with decorations and crowds. His daughter Lila had been there before the strikes, before the world burned. "They'll hit the boulevard at 2300, Adrian murmured. Shift change, predictable, disciplined, predictably dead. His lieutenant, Riley Shaw, checked his watch. Half an hour. Then quieter. "You think she's really gone, Captain? The Snow Wraith?" Adrian almost smirked. "Killed 2 years back. Northern suburbs. Building collapse took half her squad. If she were alive, we'd know. Legends die like anyone else, Riley. And tonight proves it." Wind scraped through the gutted building, rattling loose metal. Far off, the cathedral bells chimed. Someone had managed to keep the mechanism alive, a ghost of a city that once breathed. "Final gear check," Adrian ordered into his radio. "Weapons hot at 2255. Wait for my signal." Across 9 scattered buildings, all 37 insurgents settled into position, ready to unleash the deadliest trap of the winter offensive. Lieutenant Lena Hart crouched behind an overturned delivery truck, watching snow gather lightly across her rifle's heat shield while her 12-person squad moved cautiously through the junction at 5th and Carter Street. She always thought that street name was a grim joke, considering who they were up against. "Something's off," Corporal Tommy Reyes whispered, his face pale in the glow off the snow. "Too quiet. Where's the usual pot shots?" Lena had been asking herself the same thing. After 3 months of brutal street fighting, insurgents never let a patrol slip by untouched. Sniper fire, makeshift bombs, sudden ambushes, there was always something. This silence felt smothering. "Hold," she ordered, raising a fist, and her squad froze. 12 silhouettes in winter camo against the colorless ruins. "Dalton, get a drone up." Private Kira Dalton launched the palm-sized drone, its tiny rotors buzzing upward, but within seconds her tablet burst into static. "No luck, Lieutenant. Everything above street level is jammed, GPS scrambled, not even a satellite ping." A knot twisted in Lena's gut. They were 3 blocks into District 7, a zone command swore was secure. They were supposed to be checking on supposed civilian survivors in the old shopping center, but the truth clicked into place. A classic lure. She keyed her radio. "Home base, this is Hart. we've got active EW signatures in District 7. Request immediate extraction. Only static came back. Surveillance wasn't the only thing jammed. Their comms were dead too. We're walking straight into an ambush, Sergeant Jonah Hale muttered while checking his ammo. At 43, the man had seen more wars than the rest of them combined. "Ma'am, we need to pull back now." But Lena had already spotted the pressure plates under the fresh snow behind them. The path they'd just taken was mined. Forward was the only option. "They herded us," she said quietly, a cold certainty settling in. "Forced us exactly where they wanted." Tommy was trembling, breath quick. "Lieutenant, my wife just had our son last week. I promised I'd come home." "I know, Tommy." She squeezed his shoulder. "We all promised someone, and we're getting out." She scanned the looming buildings, endless windows, perfect vantage points. Any one of them could be hiding rifles aimed at their hearts. Every instinct screamed that they were standing in a textbook kill zone, the kind instructors warned about with grim stories. "There's someone who could help us," Kira said suddenly, staring at her dead radio. "If she's still alive," Jonah scoffed. "You mean the Snow Wraith? Come on, that's a fairy tale. Nobody shoots like that." But Lena had heard the rumors too. A woman sniper with an impossible record early in the war. Officially listed as dead after a disastrous collapse in the northern suburbs. A death announced almost too conveniently, just when her success was becoming a problem for the insurgents she kept cutting down. "If she's real," Lena whispered, eyes sweeping the empty windows, "tonight would be the night she shows herself. Because in about 5 minutes this street turns into a shooting gallery, and we're the targets." Church bells began to toll, marking the arrival of Christmas Day. High above, Adrian Cole watched the government squad through his scope, calculating angles and timing with practiced calm. They'd frozen in place. Smart move. The lieutenant had clearly spotted the trap, and while that wouldn't save her, Adrian had to admit he respected the awareness even as he prepared to end her. "All units acquired targets," he said evenly into the radio. Across the kill zone, insurgents adjusted their sights. Red dots could have painted the squad below, but no one here was foolish enough to use lasers. Discipline ran too deep. The soldiers below were scrambling for cover, though Adrian's team had already stripped the area of anything that could truly protect them. Even the overturned truck shielding the lieutenant had been planted by his own people 3 days earlier. A decoy offering comfort while channeling them straight into perfect firing lanes. Riley Shaw held a machine gun position in the building across the boulevard, covering the northern stretch. "Captain, they've stopped," Riley reported. "Think they figured it out?" "Doesn't matter," Adrian replied. "Walking in was easy. Walking out takes a miracle." He'd planned countless ambushes, but this one was his masterpiece, right down to the fabricated tale of trapped civilians, a calculated use of the government's own rules of engagement. Their compassion made them predictable. The cathedral bells faded, and a warped recording of Christmas music drifted through hidden speakers, twisted into something unsettling. "Psych war," Adrian murmured. "Break their spirit before their bodies." His finger rested lightly on the trigger. "On my mark." Then the backup antenna, one only he and 2 others knew existed, blew apart in a shower of sparks. A single impossible shot had hit a target barely the size of a dinner plate from what had to be 800 meters. "Captain, another shot." Riley's voice cracked as the western gun nest suddenly went silent. Adrian spun, trying to locate the shooter, but the echoing streets scattered the sound in every direction. It could have come from anywhere at all. "All units, return fire," he barked, though at what exactly? His thermal scope showed nothing but ice, snow, and concrete. Whoever was firing had no heat signature, no silhouette, nothing. Then, barely visible, a shape moved. A figure blending so perfectly with the storm, it looked like the snow itself had solidified. White ghillie suit, face fully masked, a long-barreled rifle built for extreme distance. "Northeast! Contact!" someone shouted. Gunfire erupted, sparks raining off walls, but the phantom had already vanished, slipping away like a half-remembered dream. "It's her," Riley whispered, fear unmistakable. "Snow Wraith, she's back." A third shot rang out, another vital position wiped off the board. Adrian's flawless trap was falling apart piece by piece. Far below, Lena Hart heard that first blast and braced for death, but the round hadn't been aimed at her squad. It had struck something metal high above, and suddenly her radio sputtered back to life with broken transmissions. "Home base. This is Hart. District 7, requesting emergency." But no fire was hitting them. Instead, the insurgents' positions were failing, one after another, collapsing in on themselves. Lena couldn't make sense of it until she caught a faint ripple in the snowfall. A disruption her instincts recognized instantly. "Sniper," she breathed. "Someone's countering the ambush," Jonah Hale said, stunned. "They're tearing them apart." Another shot cracked through the ruins, and an insurgent toppled from a fourth-floor window, rifle clattering on the pavement. A clean, deliberate center-mass strike. Expert work. "Back the way we came," Lena ordered, covering the squad's retreat while scanning for their unseen ally. For the briefest heartbeat, she spotted a white-clad figure on a rooftop 3 buildings to the east. Too far to catch the details, but the rifle was unmistakable. A long-range precision weapon wielded by someone operating on another level entirely. The weapon she carried was the kind of long-range precision rifle most snipers only dreamed of getting their hands on. Reyes stumbled over broken rubble but caught himself. "Who is that? Who's covering us?" Lena didn't have to guess. Every soldier in Greybridge knew the rumors, even if command swore they weren't true. A woman sniper whose impossible kill record had turned her into a myth, supposedly dead for years. They called her the Snow Wraith, a ghost wrapped in white who appeared with the snowfall, dropped targets no one else could even reach, and slipped away without leaving a trace. "Keep moving," Lena shouted, pushing hope aside. They weren't out of danger yet. The bells had gone silent, replaced by scattered gunfire, as insurgents scrambled to pin down their unseen attacker. Her squad reached an alley that had been blocked earlier, but now sat inexplicably open. A claymore mine lay beside it, wires neatly severed. Someone had cleared their escape route. "Lieutenant, look," Kira said, pointing at the snow. An arrow had been etched beside the disabled mine, along with a single word: run. So they ran, sprinting as the ambush imploded behind them. Insurgent shouts echoed through empty streets, their perfect trap turning into chaos. Lena's team emerged onto a wider road, where an evac transport waited, its crew on edge. As her squad climbed aboard, Lena turned back one last time, scanning the swirling snow. She saw her, a faint silhouette on a far-off rooftop, a white figure framed against the gray sky, watching them to make sure they made it out alive. Lena raised a salute. The distant figure didn't respond, only melted back into the storm as if she'd never existed. "Who was that?" Tommy asked again, breath shaking. "A ghost?" "A very real one," Lena murmured. Mara Voss had been hiding for 2 long years, and tonight felt like the first time she'd breathed. She shifted slightly on the rooftop, snow settling across her shoulders like natural camouflage, and watched the insurgents panic through her scope. They'd never find her. Not because she was invisible, but because they were searching for a sniper who operated the way they would. Fire and relocate, fire and relocate. But Mara didn't play by those rules. She chose perfect hides and stayed until the situation demanded she move. This rooftop gave her full 360-degree coverage, multiple escape routes, and enough fractured structures to warp sound. She could work here all night. She'd already fired 4 shots, each one surgical: the backup antenna, the western gun nest, the spotter in Building 6, the insurgent lieutenant trying to rally his people. Every shot chosen not just for tactical disruption but to break their morale. They needed to believe the legend was real again. Her rifle, a customized 338 Lula Magnum she'd modified over years, felt like an extension of her own body. Officially, the weapon didn't even exist anymore. She'd been declared dead, her gear destroyed. This rifle belonged to a ghost. She found her next target, a radio operator, critical communications link. Adjusting for the 12-knot northwest wind, she squeezed the trigger. The specialist dropped instantly, static hissing through his ruined radio. Her earpiece flickered with chatter from a tapped government frequency. Unknown, friendly fire-suppressing insurgent ambush in District 7, requesting authorization to... Mara switched to insurgent comms. Panic laced their voices. "Can't get her position? It's the ghost. She's back." "No, impossible. Confirmed dead 2 years. Another shot." The insurgent on Building 9 who'd been creeping to flank her toppled. He'd been skilled, careful, but Mara had clocked him 10 minutes earlier and simply waited. It had been 24 months since she vanished. 2 years recovering from injuries she wasn't supposed to survive. The northern suburbs op wasn't meant to kill insurgents. It had been designed to kill her. Someone in her own chain of command had sold her out, arranging the building collapse that confirmed her death. She'd crawled from those ruins with shattered ribs, a concussion, and the brutal certainty that her real enemy sat on her own side. So she vanished, let the world believe the convenient lie, and spent 2 years becoming exactly what they'd tried to erase, a genuine ghost. But on this Christmas Eve, tucked away in her rural hideout, Mara Voss had been monitoring intercepted radio chatter when she caught word of an ambush forming in District 7. A government squad, 12 soldiers, most barely older than recruits, was about to be erased in a flawlessly engineered kill box. None of them deserved that. So she returned to the city that had forged her legend. Now she shifted from her rooftop perch, time to close the distance. The insurgents were scrambling to rebuild their plan. They still held numbers and positions, but she needed to shatter their confidence completely. Mara dropped through a break in the roof into the darkness below, her night vision activating in a soft green glow. Her movements flowed like water through the wreckage, rifle ready, senses sharp. Somewhere above, fighters searched for her. Let them hunt. Greybridge was her terrain, not theirs. 2 insurgents stepped into a hallway ahead, and she took them down at close range. Calm, precise shots. The rifle wasn't built for tight quarters, but her skill bridged the gap easily. Without slowing, she slipped out a window, crossed a narrow plank bridging the space between buildings, and entered the next structure, always pushing forward, always defying the long-range stereotype they thought defined her. Her old radio frequency suddenly crackled. "Snow Wraith, if you're out there, this is Captain Elias Mercer, 7th Regiment. We need..." Mara shut it off instantly. No teaming up, no coordination, no trusting anyone again. Alone meant unbetrayable. The building trembled as an explosion detonated below. The insurgents were getting desperate, tossing out charges to flush her from hiding. Mara allowed herself a grim smile. Desperation made enemies sloppy, and sloppy opponents made easy targets. She reached a window with a clear line of sight on the insurgent command post. an office shell where their leader directed the entire operation. Through her scope, she spotted him. Adrian Cole, once government military, now a hardened insurgent after his family died in an airstrike he believed was intentional. A dangerous man, smart, driven, and with nothing left to lose. She could end him with one clean shot, crush their leadership in an instant. But she hesitated, not out of pity, but strategy. Killing him now would turn him into a martyr and stiffen their resolve. She needed to break him, not immortalize him. Let him feel what it meant for a dead legend to walk again. Mara moved deeper into insurgent territory, the hunt truly beginning. Meanwhile, Adrian's careful masterpiece was dissolving into a nightmare. In under 6 minutes, 9 of his defensive points had gone dark. Comms channels were collapsing. The squad he'd planned to wipe out had slipped away. And somewhere in the snowy maze, a ghost was dismantling his work with surgical, terrifying accuracy. "Sector 3, report," he barked, but only static replied. Riley Shaw rushed up beside him, breath tight. "Captain, we need to pull back. This spot's blown." "We're not retreating," Adrian snapped. 37 fighters don't run from one person, legend or not. But even he could hear the tremor in his own voice. Snow Wraith's reputation had been built on operations exactly like this, appearing out of nowhere, twisting enemy tactics against them, disappearing before retaliation. The updates pouring in were impossible. Every shot she took severed a critical link in his network, never the easy kill, always the one that triggered a chain reaction. It felt like she had read his entire blueprint. "She's in Building 12, someone called over the radio. "We've got her corner." 2 sharp shots cut off the transmission. "She's not cornered," Adrian said, almost whispering. "We are." He swept the area with his thermal scope, but the falling snow produced countless false signatures. And if the rumors were true, Snow Wraith didn't radiate heat like a normal soldier. Special suits, masking techniques, tricks that fooled modern sensors. Another position went quiet. Then another. She was gaining speed now, turning his ambush into her own hunting ground. "All units, fall back to Rally Point Beta," Adrian finally ordered, accepting the reality he'd been resisting. Fighting withdrawal, keep it tight. But discipline was already unraveling. The radio filled with panic. Fighters firing blindly at shadows. His unit's confidence fracturing under the pressure of an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, couldn't understand. A window shattered inward. Adrian spun, rifle raised, but it was only debris shaken loose from above. Still, his nerves were frayed. Fear spread like a virus, and even commanders weren't immune. Riley Shaw grabbed his arm. "We've lost the eastern approaches. If we don't move now..." Riley never finished, because at that exact moment every light in District 7 died. Not just their building, everything. Street lamps, generators, office remnants, all snapped into darkness at once. Snow Wraith had taken the entire grid offline, plunging the battlefield into a black void lit only by scattered flames and the pale shimmer of falling snow. In that suffocating dark, Adrian heard a rifle shot. Close, uncomfortably close. His radio operator crumpled without a whisper, the emergency transmitter she'd been about to activate shattered by the same round that killed her. Adrian stared at her body, absorbing the significance. Mara Voss was inside his command zone, firing through walls with the confidence of someone who owned the night. "Go!" he roared at Riley. "Everyone out, now!" Whatever discipline his fighters had maintained evaporated into raw fear as they bolted for the exits. Adrian lingered just long enough to take one final look at the room where his perfect ambush had existed only an hour before. Then an emerald green laser dot flickered on the wall beside him. He followed the line back to its source and glimpsed her. a white-clad silhouette framed in a shattered window across the street, rifle leveled at his heart. She didn't shoot. She simply let him see her, a message as sharp as any bullet. You live because I choose it. And then she vanished into the snow like a thought dissolving. Adrian ran. Mara shadowed the retreating insurgents through the maze of ruined streets, not to wipe them all out, but to make sure the survivors fully understood they'd been beaten. She took down 5 more during their withdrawal, each shot guiding them toward the southern escape routes and away from any civilian pockets. She passed through the remains of an old apartment complex, once her home. She moved through it like a ghost navigating a memory. The staircase where Lila had learned to climb was now a twisted spill of rebar. The playground, visible through the destroyed wall, was nothing but a crater. 2 young insurgents stumbled into view ahead, barely adults and clearly terrified, separated from their unit. Their uncertain movements and sloppy handling told her they weren't seasoned fighters, recruits, kids. She let them go. Not every target needed to fall. Restraint took more discipline than pulling a trigger, and Mara still practiced it. She switched to the insurgent frequency. Captain Cole, I know you're listening. Silence. Then Adrian's strained voice. What do you want, Ghost? Your ambush is done. Your people are scattered. You have 2 choices. Keep heading south to your extraction point or turn back, and I'll kill every last one who follows. I'm giving you Christmas morning. Take it and leave. Another stretch of quiet. Then, you should be dead. So should plenty of others, she replied. But here we are. Through her scope, she watched the insurgents fleeing faster now, abandoning gear as they ran. Your fight isn't with those soldiers tonight. Mine isn't either. Go home, Adrian, while the word still means anything. She killed the transmission and moved again, heading for the cathedral, the tallest vantage point in District 7 and perfect for confirming their retreat. The climb took 8 minutes. Old injuries tugged at her ribs, and 2 years out of the game made her slower than she liked. But she reached the bell tower, settled her rifle, and swept the southern sector. Below, Adrian's surviving fighters pushed through the snow, some supporting the wounded as they limped toward escape. Some fighters had even tossed their rifles in the snow as they fled. The disciplined unit from an hour earlier had unraveled into a scattered mob, their combat strength practically gone. Through her scope, Mara Voss counted the survivors. 29 reached the extraction point, 8 unaccounted for, likely dead or hiding somewhere in the wreckage. Losses the insurgents could stomach, but for the government squad she'd saved, it would have been total annihilation. Mara waited until the final insurgent vehicle vanished into the blizzard, carrying the remnants of Adrian Cole's force out of District 7. Then silence swallowed the cathedral, snow drifting through the shattered tower, while the Christmas bells hung mute above her. She thought of Lila, the daughter she'd lost, thought of the city that no longer resembled the place they'd lived, thought of how legends were born out of violence and kept alive through fear, how she had become something she never meant to be. Her radio crackled weakly. Snow Wraith, this is Captain Elias Mercer again. Please respond. Command wants a debrief, wants you... Mara switched it off for good. No debriefs, no return. She had come back for one night, saved 12 soldiers, dismantled an ambush, and that was enough. Remaining a ghost was safer. Her safe house, 15 miles from District 7, lay beneath the wreckage of an old school. She arrived 3 hours after the fight, every step weighted by exhaustion and pain. Once the adrenaline drained, only the familiar emptiness remained. She peeled off the ghillie suit, cleaned her rifle with mechanical precision, and settled onto the single cot that made up most of her home. A camping stove warmed the air. Stacks of canned food filled a corner. No power, no running water, no contact with the world above, just the bare essentials of survival. She had been Lieutenant Mara Voss once, a sniper with a rising career, decorated twice, endorsed for advanced training. Then Lila died in an airstrike gone wrong, a miscalculated operation meant for insurgent leaders. Still, Mara stayed in uniform, channeling grief into lethal focus. She never chose the Snow Wraith identity. Insurgents labeled her that after a brutal winter operation where she dropped 17 targets in 6 hours. The nickname stuck, and with it came unwanted attention. Even her own side began treating her as a political inconvenience, too effective for their narrative. Someone in command decided she was worth more as a martyr than a living complication. They sent her into a rigged building under the guise of an intel op, expecting the collapse to finish her. It nearly did. She survived only through grit, luck, and a family who dragged her from the rubble. 6 months recovering in their basement, then 18 more living quietly in the countryside, monitoring radio traffic and letting the world believe she'd died. Tonight broke all her rules. Don't engage, don't reveal, never let anyone suspect Snow Wraith remained alive. But hearing the ambush forming and knowing 12 soldiers were about to die, she couldn't stay hidden. She intervened. And now the cycle would start again. Reports, rumors, command investigations, the hunt. Mara lay back on the cot and stared at the cracked ceiling. Lila's photo rested on a makeshift shelf. A bright-eyed girl frozen at 7 years old, all potential snuffed out too soon. "I broke my promise, sweetheart," Mara whispered. "Stayed hidden for 2 years, but not tonight. I'm sorry." The photograph, as always, offered no answer. Outside, snow continued drifting over Greybridge. Christmas morning crept closer without caring about the grief below. Somewhere, the squad she saved celebrated being alive. Somewhere else, the insurgents she'd shattered mourned their losses, and in a ruined school basement, a legend tried to remember what it meant to still feel human. 3 days after Christmas, Adrian Cole returned to District 7 alone. He'd spent those 3 days replaying every moment of the failed ambush, dissecting every decision until he arrived at a conclusion his remaining fighters thought outright madness. Adrian Cole needed to find the Snow Wraith. Not to kill her, but to understand her. The Cathedral Bell Tower was the obvious place to look, the highest vantage point and a natural stronghold. He climbed the damaged stairs carefully, rifle slung behind him and both hands visible. He wasn't here for a confrontation. Mara Voss sat waiting on a broken pew, her rifle resting across her lap. She'd known he would return. Men like Adrian couldn't accept defeat without answers. "Persistent," she said without lifting her weapon. "Foolish, but persistent." Adrian stopped about 10 meters away, close enough to speak, far enough to survive if this meeting turned bad. "I had to see you," he said. "The real you, not the legend." "Why?" Mara asked, her face partly hidden by a scarf, only her eyes exposed, tired, cold, but unmistakably alive. Adrian exhaled. 4 years in this war, lost everything. My family died because some officer decided casualties were acceptable, so I defected. Swore I'd make them pay. I've been doing that ever since. He gestured at the ruined city around them. "But you're different. You were elite government forces. Why vanish?" Mara studied him for a long moment. "Because they tried to kill me. My own command decided I was a problem and arranged an accident. I lived. Now I'm inconvenient and invisible." Adrian absorbed that. "So we're both ghosts, both betrayed by the people we served. The difference," Mara said softly, "is that I'm not out for revenge. I'm just trying to survive." "Then why come back?" Adrian pressed. "Why save that squad? You could have stayed hidden forever. Mara rose and slung her rifle. Because those soldiers were about to die, and I'm sick of watching decent people die because officers on both sides treat lives like chess pieces. Your ambush would have worked. 12 bodies on Christmas Eve. Families planning funerals over another ruined block of concrete. For what? Adrian had no response. I came back to break your trap, nothing more, Mara continued. Not to pick a side, not to revive my career, just to stop one atrocity on one night. Now I'm leaving. Don't follow me, don't hunt me. Tell your people Snow Wraith is dead again if you must. I'm done. And if I can't? Adrian asked quietly. If I have to report this? Her rifle snapped up in one smooth, effortless motion, barrel trained on his chest. Then you die here, and I disappear again with one more weight on my conscience. Your choice. They stood facing one another in the cold, two veterans shaped by betrayal, two souls trying to make sense of a war that no longer had any. Slowly, Adrian raised his hands. I won't report you, won't tell anyone I found you. Why? She asked. Because you're right, he said, lowering his hands carefully. This war is devouring all of us, good, bad, in between. We're ghosts, wandering ruins, pretending the violence has meaning. If you found a way out, maybe that's the only victory left. Mara let the rifle drop from firing position. Go home, Adrian. Find a different fight, or better, stop fighting at all. This city is lost. Anyone who stays becomes a casualty eventually. And you? He asked quietly. She turned away. I already am one. I died 2 years ago. Remember? Mara Voss said softly as she headed toward the opposite exit, the one Adrian hadn't entered through. Merry Christmas, Captain. 3 days late, but still. Merry Christmas, Snow Wraith, he murmured back. When Adrian finally descended the cathedral stairs 10 minutes later, the bell tower stood empty, snow drifting through its shattered walls as if no one had been there at all. Just another ghost tale. Another legend whispered in ruins. Dawn brushed pale gray over the eastern horizon as Mara slipped out of Greybridge, moving through abandoned streets and past homes long reduced to memories. The snowfall had eased, leaving everything deceptively peaceful, blanketed in white. She drifted past a government checkpoint at the city's edge. The sentries never noticed her, never sensed a ghost sliding through the last shadows of night. She passed insurgent lookout posts just as quietly. By full daylight, Mara was 5 miles into the countryside, following hidden trails through frost-covered woods and open fields. The war hadn't reached this far. Maybe it never would. Maybe somewhere in the world, violence still felt distant, instead of inevitable. She reached an old farmhouse she used as a secondary safe house, dropped down into the cellar hideaway, and finally let exhaustion take hold. 3 days with no sleep, constant vigilance, and the weight of combat pressed down on her all at once. Before lying down, she pulled out Lila's photo again, studying her daughter's bright face, remembering Christmas mornings when the biggest concern was whether Santa brought the right gifts. I saved 12 people, sweetheart, she whispered. 12 families don't have to mourn because of what I did. Does that make anything better? Does it even matter? The picture, as always, stayed silent. Mara tucked it away, wrapped herself in blankets, and closed her eyes. Outside, Christmas morning went on without her. The world believed the Snow Wraith was only a story, a phantom appearing with the snow and vanishing just as quickly. Let them believe that. Legends were always easier than truth. She dreamed of Lila, of a city that once had warmth and lights, of Christmas mornings that belonged to another life where choices were kinder, and children didn't die, and soldiers didn't fade into myths. When Mara woke 12 hours later, Christmas evening had settled in. The war rumbled on somewhere behind her, indifferent to her absence. Cities burned or didn't. People lived or didn't. The grinding machinery of conflict continued without noticing one woman tucked away in a ruined cellar. But for the first time in 2 years, Mara Voss felt something unfamiliar settle over her. Peace, fragile and fleeting, but real enough to hold for a moment. The peace she felt was temporary, fragile, probably nothing more than an illusion. But it was peace all the same. She'd saved 12 lives. She'd survived yet another operation. She was still free, still hidden, still herself beneath the myth everyone whispered about. Tomorrow, she would relocate again. Tomorrow, the cycle of concealment would continue. Tomorrow, she'd listen to radio chatter and wonder if she would ever truly slip the grip of this war. But tonight, Christmas night, she allowed herself to breathe. As always, the legend of the Snow Wraith would grow. People would swear they'd seen her in every snowfall, credit every impossible shot to her, build new tales around old mysteries. Command would chase rumors now and then, find nothing, and eventually mark her file as permanently closed. And somewhere far from their search grids, in quiet corners of the countryside, Mara Voss would keep surviving. Not as a hero, not as a soldier, and not even as a whole person most days, but as a ghost who surfaced only when the moment demanded it, reminding the world that some legends refuse to fade away. She stood, stretched, checked her rifle, and prepared for her next move. The war wasn't finished. Her solitude wasn't finished. The long, cold years of living between human and myth weren't finished. But on this one Christmas in one ruined city, beneath one flawless snowstorm, the ghost had returned. 12 soldiers lived because she intervened. One flawless ambush collapsed because she existed. And out in the shattered streets, people were already murmuring the tale, keeping the myth alive for another winter. Snow Wraith, the white ghost, the legend that would not die quietly. Mara gave a grim smirk, packed her few possessions, and slipped back into the night. Behind her, the farmhouse settled into silence, empty once more. No trace she'd ever been there. Just another phantom passing through. Just another tale for long winter nights. Just another Christmas in a war that had forgotten what peace even meant.